I'm Harley Schlanger from the Larouche organization with your daily video update for May 30th, 2022. Today is Memorial Day. It's a day we set aside to honor those who died in wars serving the United States. As we honor those who gave their lives in defense of the nation, let us keep in mind that one of the best ways to honor them is to ensure that in the future, American men and women will not die in wars which serve no purpose, which are based on false narratives and lies, such as defending a rules-based order, which serves only the interests of the most powerful and wealthy networks who benefit from war and use wars for geopolitical gain, not for the defense of our freedoms. We see today a push for new wars against Russia and China. These serve no national purpose. These are wars that should not take place, but they're being launched to defend a bankrupt imperial system, which is collapsing. Today, NATO and the Biden administration blame the Russians for every single problem we face. From food shortages, other necessary goods shortages, fuel shortages, inflation, supply chain problems, which is nonsense. All of these predated the current war going on between Russia and Ukraine, which is actually a proxy war in which Ukraine is being used as the battering ram on behalf of NATO and Anglo-American financial interests. Who's really responsible for contracting world food production, for example? It's the global cartels. It's the green policy. It's the neoliberal economics that say the market is the determining factor in what is produced and sold and who can do it and who benefits, as opposed to taking care of the needs of hundreds of millions of people who are food insecure today. And this war, of course, could have been avoided. The United States, the United Kingdom, and NATO refused to negotiate in good faith with Vladimir Putin, who raised, since at least 2007, maybe even since 2004, legitimate concerns for guarantees of Russian security demands. They kept pushing instead for an eastward expansion of NATO, putting troops and weapons closer and closer to the borders of Russia. They keep prodding Zelensky and the Ukrainian government to fight, pouring in weapons, pouring in aid, hailing them as heroes, and ignoring the fact that in their midst are fighters who owe allegiance not to Western democracy, but to Nazi slogans and ideology. And this just means more death and destruction. Why? Well, Zelensky said he would accept neutrality for Ukraine. He would accept that Ukraine could not join NATO. Well, why is he not allowed to go ahead and negotiate that? That's where you see the absurdity of the continuation of this war, that it has nothing to do with Ukraine's freedom or the defense of the Ukrainian people. But the U.S. war hawks and their allies intend to destroy Russia and to carry out a regime change there, because the Russians will not submit to their utopian demands for a new global order, the so-called Great Reset and Green New Deal, which don't benefit most of the world, which only benefit the most wealthy and powerful. So we're also told that the world is united against Russia. Well, it's not true. Many in the South have refused to back the sanctions. They're not joining the piling on against Russia and China. Instead, we're seeing an emergence of ideas that we saw in the 50s and 60s around the non-aligned anti-colonial networks. But it's only the arrogant leaders in the West who ignore these sentiments and push ahead. They try to bribe or bully leaders of countries in order to prop up their collapsing financial system. This is the sad state we're in today. And it's one which requires deep thinking and courageous action by citizens of countries in the Northern Hemisphere, particularly in Western Europe and the United States. Instead of going along and shrugging your shoulders and saying, well, there's nothing we can do to stop a war, we can. We have stopped wars. We had an opportunity from 2017 to 2020 to put an end to these endless wars, as President Trump promised he would do. But he was not allowed to do it. And we didn't have enough support at that time to overcome the power of the war lobby and the globalist financial cartels. Now we're seeing something very interesting occurring. As the Schiller Institute and the Larouche organization are taking the lead in mobilizing to convene a convention, a conference, or a series of conferences, to establish a new security and financial architecture, and at the same time are exposing the fraud of those who are pushing for war, we're coming under attack. Well, that's not surprising. That's always been the case with the Larouche movement. We know when you tell the truth, you'll be slandered, as was Lyndon LaRouche throughout the last 5 decades of his active political career. Now, the government of Ukraine under Zelensky has something called the Center for Countering Disinformation. And they've released statements condemning Helga Zepp-LaRouche, Colonel Richard Black, and Ray McGovern, all of whom spoke at our last conference on May 26th. They've attacked them as Putin puppets and apologists. The only other American who they named was Tulsi Gabbard. And why are they under attack? Because they reject the Biden administration UK NATO war narrative. Obviously, if you don't want to fight senseless wars, if you don't want to drive whole sections of the world into food insecurity and poverty, you must be a Putin puppet. And they're demanding more war. Well, the Schiller Institute has just announced that we will be holding a new conference, a new international conference online, June 18th and 19th, to discuss how to defeat the war hawks and what policies will address the serious crises that we face in the world, including hunger, including these kinds of imperial wars. So on this Memorial Day, join us in honoring those who paid the ultimate price, sacrificed their lives in hopes of providing a peaceful and more secure future. Those who died in these wars based on fraud are not responsible for their deaths, but those who sent them to those wars are the ones who are responsible. Let's honor those who made the sacrifice and make sure that never again will American men and women die for the benefit of billionaires, war hawks, and neoliberals. So be sure to share this video and join the Larouche organization. Join with us to get the real story out. We represent by far the majority of people in the world. When you're told Americans support the war, remember how long ago was it that Donald Trump won a presidential election by saying he would not continue the endless wars. So we need a mobilization that will ensure that no unnecessary sacrifices will take place. So join us and watch on this site, on the Larouche organization site, for information about the upcoming online conference. And thanks for joining me today. I'll see you again tomorrow.
On est